Hey everybody, it's Nico, and this is X's for Show, the show where we bring you fandom reactions to all of your favorite content. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nico Action. That's NicoAction.
And I'm TK. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at xnateXgrayX.
Which for me leaves Kevo, and you can find me on the socials at KevoReally, KevoReally.
And okay, so we're usually like, look at my polished background, and very organized to a fault in how we're doing these things. But this weekend, we happen to be away at the amazing Asbury Park, staying at the one and only Asbury Legend Empress Hotel, celebrating our incredible partner and show contributor and co-creator Jonah's birthday. So with all of that life stuff going on, it kind of seemed like we wouldn't be able to have like a normal broadcast, but we decided that instead of not doing a broadcast at all, we would try something a little bit new, something a little bit more relaxed, something with a little bit of shouting, I guess, and make this thing happen anyway. And I could not be more excited than to do it with these two guys.
We're just chilling in a hotel room on the Jersey Shore, feeling a lot of passion about The Mandalorian and Picard. And, you know, I think I just didn't want to wait anymore to talk about it. I know you guys didn't either. I know we couldn't just keep doing it over drinks and dinner, so it felt important to come sit down and do it with all of you.
Absolutely, and for a week of reunions and wild new formats for tried and true old things, it's a good time for it.
So one of the big things that for me is pretty front and center at this conversation is the reimagining of the Star Wars and Star Trek brands as verifiable media powerhouses. And I think it's always so funny because I remember watching the Toys That Made Us, and I just want to give the Toys That Made Us, a really big 200%, super shout, because one of the things that it gave us was information that I feel like really made the whole media picture come together for me a little bit better. When I heard that basically all the Star Trek toys ever sold less than any one movie of Star Wars, it really put into perspective not which fandom was more popular, but what these fandoms were intended to be. Star Wars toys are meant to be an element of childhood. Star Trek toys are action figures and realistic props. And if we were home right now, I would have my tricorder. I would maybe have some other Starfleet gear going on. But end of the day, I think Star Wars and Star Trek have really come a long way and have entered the cultural vernacular of legitimacy.
And I think we are in a time where our generation specifically is growing up and not letting go of childish things. We are choosing to continue to engage with the fandoms that we loved as kids that were designed to be for kids. When you talk about the Toys That Made Us, a lot of these things remained popular because there was sellability in the merchandising. If that wasn't there, people aren't necessarily as interested in continuing to make the product that sells the merchandise. That's where the really good money is. So we bought all that as kids, but we loved the stories and we continue to want the stories. And, whenever we talk about Star Trek, I always think about the infamous clip of Freddie Prinze Jr. talking about, what happened with Star Wars and why Star Wars fans are so harsh. And he talks about how they're movies for kids, and the originals were movies for kids, and the prequel trilogy were for another generation of kids, and the sequel trilogy is for a different generation of kids, and you're just upset because the franchise didn't grow up with you. And while largely I do agree with what he's saying, what's really amazing is as time has gone on and properties have changed hands and storytellers have been able to stake their living in these franchises, they actually have started to grow up with us a bunch. A lot of the products are still very child friendly and accessible to a lot of age groups. But I think Mandalorian especially is a very good example of a product that grew up, the franchise giving something that grew up with the young people that found it. And similarly, I mean, I think Picard grows up, Picard takes us into the retirement level of that same thing, which I so appreciate.
Yeah. And I think something that helps a lot of these franchises too is that it feels that they were always created with the intention of being for adults and for kids from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And, TNG was aimed at our parents and something that was intended for them to be able to share with us. And so it obviously, now that as we have grown up, it's something that we still love. It's something that we still want to see more of. And a lot of people want to see an evolution of, want to see more, want to see whatever's going to come next.
And which is why I'm thrilled that oh man, that's like...
Yeah, you want me to go shut that out?
I might need to work on that.
We might need to, adjust the lighting. Oh, we're all doing it.
Kella's going to make a leap. We're live on location. Get into it, baby.
This is just what it is. Oh,
I'm working on it.
No, that one's not plugged in.
So the thing I love the most about these two shows, and yet I think have the hardest time with, is
now you're an angel.
I'm
obsessed with it. Okay. Here, what I'll do is crack the light open or the window open from a place that's not as direct.
I love everything that's happening right now. Okay, I'm going to talk while they're doing this. Mandalorian revisits something that so many of us hoped to see revisited. And at the same time, I think one of the things that it also offers us is a chance to do it a little bit new. New by virtue of reimagining, because one of the things that makes me love The Mandalorian the most is the technology doesn't feel particularly new. There's nothing that's so visually unbelievable about The Mandalorian that I could not imagine it coming from Lucasfilm in the past. Whereas I think Picard, it maybe had a little bit more growing up to do. And so I'm glad it did it.
And I think that's been a mixed bag for both franchises. I think there are times where Star Trek has really sort of sleekened in a way that feels at pace with how culture in a present day has evolved, and the two feel very in sync. But there are times where, Star Trek really feels like it's behind where our imaginations are in present time. And similarly, it's always it's so weird having grown up and grown through the era where George Lucas was like, I have access to so much new technology. I'm going to tweak these films in every single way possible. And there's just so much CGI that, for me, a lot of it doesn't really work. I don't really understand where he's going with the vision. I so appreciate that he was like, this is my baby and I'm going to do whatever I want to it.
Yeah.
I appreciate an artist who is going to do, who is, regardless of what fandom thinks, is going to do the thing that they think is right, even when we don't agree. The Mandalorian represents such a fascinating return to the roots of things like practical effects. And, Grogu being such a fantastic example of, a living entity that is a puppet rather than a CGI thing. And, it's very special.
Now, Kevo, I know that growing up, you weren't a Star Trek guy at all. You were just a Star Wars guy. Growing up, I was a bit of both, kind of more of a Trekkie. TK, which, were you one more than the other, kind of splitsies?
Exactly, splitsies right down the middle. Thank you. And they came right around the same time. What's really funny is I was a big sci-fi and fantasy kid from a very young age, but for some reason, Star Trek: The Next Generation, just all I would see were the commercials for it, and they creeped me out. I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it.
No, I get it.
And Star Wars, I just didn't understand. I didn't understand why there were 3 movies, but the numbers weren't right. And
so weird.
It really bothered me. And one day I remember these things happened the same year. It was when I was in 5th grade. For Star Wars, I had to stay home sick from school. My mother was a huge Star Wars person, and she bought the videos. This was before the George Lucas remake. So this was the original release of the trilogy. But she bought the videos and she sat me down. She was like, you were home from school all day. You got nothing to do. Watch A New Hope. And I instantly was just absolutely in love. And I think because of that, I kind of reevaluated my priorities when it came to pushing stuff away that I didn't understand or thought was weird. And I started picking up Star Trek VHSs. And, that was such a funny time because there was so much stuff that you didn't have access to except for on VHS. And, to own every episode of Star Trek on VHS was an insane task. So I was just kind of like getting one or two wherever I could. But what I really fell in love with was Voyager. That's my show through and through.
I love you talking about the VHSs and the whole process of your discovery and the confusion because, there really was this confusion, especially for when you're a freaking kid. In the 90s, you don't understand it being episode 4.
And there's no internet. Just barely there was internet.
But yeah, exactly. Until we were a certain age. And by that point, the prequels were coming out. And so all these things were pretty established and well known. So you understood. But especially when we were like in kindergarten or whatever, we had no idea what was going on. And it was this epic seeming thing. And because of the nature of what Star Wars was like at that time and that age, and for us growing up, it's that it perplexes me so much when people are like, Star Wars is so much more confusing now. You have Wikipedia.
You've got the full numbering. You've got 1 through 9.
You've got all these things that make it really actually easy
Wikipedia.
To access Star Wars. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, a lot of it is usually like fairly accessible. There's especially shows they try to put in tags or nods. They want you to enjoy it. They want to be able to pull you in. And but at the time, I remember those Star Trek commercials for WPIX for Sunday afternoons, and Star Trek always seemed very scary and dangerous. And they had the dramatic interstitials for when they would go to commercial, where it'd be the stinger and they show the logo of the show. It was such an event, and I found it very intimidating as a child. Not like insulting toward it, but that's how elevated it seemed.
Yeah, you just didn't get it.
Yeah, it seemed like it would be far too above me, and I didn't have a Star Trek parent like you did.
Sorry. Okay. And, I want to set the page a little bit for how you got those VHSs for the most part. Not you per se, but the average person.
Yeah,
it was through like the Columbia Random House. You bought them in a series. You got the next one the next month. You got 2 a month. That's 4 episodes. There's 200 episodes. That's 4 years of buying. Then there's the 66 of the original. Then there's Deep Space Nine. Then there's Voyager. And then, DVD sets came out and sort of destroyed the cassette by cassette market. But before there was the internet, and even kids today, even literal children-ish today, when they're in their 30s, they're going to be able to say, before the internet was the way it is now, especially with the onset of, AI bots and the upcoming onset of the AGI revolution. Hello, overlords. I feel like one of the things that gets lost is the access to canon as a kid was status. And it was actually financial. That's one of the reasons that so many nerd spaces are often considered white spaces, because let me tell you how many of my incredible blurred friends will tell you that blackness includes nerddom. And it's that having access to multiple VHS collections and having access to kind of the space to store old comics, those were exclusionary things. And the idea that even if you weren't a member of a minority where the world was sort of designed to make that exclusionary against you, you still had I was 9. How did I borrowed my I borrowed. Like I copied my dad's tapes. Like he had them. He had the Star Trek tapes that he borrowed from my uncle, and he copied them. Not to put anybody on blast. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations on that has run. But
Fred Rogers wanted us to do it. It's fine.
Yeah. So we had the whole set of the original and the next gen, and it was kind of status. It was kind of like something I could point to. Whereas like I've seen these all, I know it, but that wasn't because I did it. That was because I lucked into it. And I think the modern age of Star Wars and Star Trek is about both satisfying that need for the classic fan and further enamoring the new fan with cutting edge ideas. And that's, I think, what these two series, 3 seasons in, both sorts of reflections of the past, both do.
And Picard especially gives us something so interesting because it is a follow-up to an primarily episodic television show with very few serial elements. Overall, over the course of its 9 seasons? 7 seasons. There is a very, very nebulous meta plot involving Q and Picard. And there are a few season to season and, maybe revisited multiple seasons plots that give us an idea of what is happening in the wider world. But other than that, each episode is a discrete unit with a discrete beginning, middle, and end story that if you did not catch it the previous week, you are completely fine to watch the next one, and you would know everything that you needed to know 5 minutes in. And to have a follow-up that is entirely serial, in which you absolutely must have seen the previous episode and almost certainly season in order to really get what's happening, is maybe not quite unique, but it is rare to have shows that follow up with their episodic property with such a tight serial format. And I think it's one of the things that I was so focused on throughout watching the show, and especially in the 3rd season, which is picking up on thematically so much stuff from Next Generation.
Yeah.
It really is complicated and fascinating.
It felt to me in so many ways, especially when we started Picard and the pandemic hit, and so many other things were distracting, and so we never finished the 1st season, and then we came back to it and we watched all of 1 and 2 into 3. And one of the things that really struck me is that it very much felt like a decompressed film.
Mm-hmm.
I too much of the air was let out, though, I think is part of the huge issue with it. Because it's not like it was multiple films across a television season. It was one film each season, super decompressed into 10 episodes. And even if it had just been 2 movies per season, like 2 5-episode halves or arcs or something, but especially when each season is so disconnected from each one, that's a lot to ask of your audience.
Especially because there are definitely 2 movies worth of content. They're interwoven, though. There's not like a stop at 5 episodes and then kind of a jump into a new one. So you actually have exactly what you're saying in terms of content already written. It's just the kind of division of it that is, it's not that it totally doesn't work, but I think you're right. It is not a traditional television show, and it's not a movie, and it's not really even a hybrid of the two. It is very much, as you said, a decompressed movie, but maybe a little too decompressed. Yeah, I see that.
And then every season was Stealth the Borg, and I love the Borg. I love a lot of their early stories. I love what they did with Locutus. I love what the Borg did with transforming the other Star Trek shows. I love Flabber Flabber is a great part of the Borg mythos. And I think that the biggest problem here is that I wasn't looking to get stealthed by this show over and over again.
And more than just stealth, bait and switched this season.
Yeah, I was Borgen switched which is not just a German disease, but I really thought that I was going to. So okay, first season, it's vaguely
Android gods.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, as you were saying all this, it's the Borg, that could turn out to be future God Borg. So who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, I do, I give them some credit insofar as the Borg were a really important element because they're a really important part of Picard's journey.
Yeah.
But they were an element. They were not quite the bait and switch that happens in seasons 2 and 3. But that season firmly establishes the Borg are really important to Picard's mythos, and we haven't forgotten about that. Mm-hmm. Season 2 picks up on that and gives us a really solid Borg storyline that says, we told you we knew they were really important to Picard. Here's how we can take that someplace new. And here's how we can maybe have a development that isn't just the same. The Borg have returned, scarier than ever.
Well, the Borg come in and they're like, hit me with your best shot. And they just want to save the world because hell is for children. And love is a battlefield. We belong.
All songs that should have been sung by a cast member at some point.
I would love to hear We Belong. I love that song.
Yeah, that's definitely, Girardi doing We Belong could have been, just them singing once an episode would have been really great.
Oh, but, Disco's going to do a musical their last season.
I would
They're
love
just
to see
itching.
It. Season 3 really follows up on season 2 following up on the Borg and goes, no, we need to do one more. The Borg are back Borg. And they're scarier than ever. And
we did a cute Borg
story.
We need to do a real Borg
story.
And it's a bummer because it actually is a great Borg story, and it makes a ton of sense. But because we got this Girardi evolution of the idea of the Borg and a way of moving beyond the idea that they are just mindless killers. We talk a lot about X-Men stuff here, and there is some really interesting and sometimes very vitriolic discourse going on right now about the Brood as just kind of mindless killers and whether it's okay to just want them completely dead and just to eradicate them. And I think there's a similar discourse been happening throughout Star Trek's canon about the Borg, and I felt season 2 really gave us some solid ideas for moving past that. And then season 3 pulled us really right back into it in a way that, while I loved the story and the action and the intrigue and the references back to old stuff and Alice Krieg's voice being back in the mix, it just forgot about the work that it had done a year ago.
I wonder then if part of the intention of this season was to try and close that big red door on what the Borg had been. We never finished Voyager, so I don't know a ton of the end there. I've now read just a little bit, but that was now 25 years ago, and so I wonder if they wanted to. And maybe it's a little bit needless, especially if you're going to be evolving the concept. You don't need to bring back the old one to say we're not going to bring back the old one. But I wonder if that was even...
That's the perfect way to put it, though.
I feel like that's what they were trying to do, because something that we noted as we were binging Picard was, as we kept getting to new episodes, it felt like we were getting apologies for old episodes in a way. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that insulting so much as responding to feedback. Like, Riker and Troy were so glib and so blithe in their season 1 Picard episode. And I'm sure the intention of that is, look how happy your favorite characters are, because this might be the only season you'll never see them again. But then they get a lot of feedback of, you killed their son and they're just making pizza.
Well, and if I can, and I don't mean this I mean this constructive because season 3 is by far my favorite.
Yeah, me too.
But there's stuff about season 1 and two's inclusions of earlier characters that feels a little bit a high school production of Master of the House.
Okay.
Like kind of giving everybody some peas and carrots to do.
Which is funny because season 3 is like so hardcore fan servicey. It's like, don't worry, you're getting everybody. But that feels more right than don't worry, we didn't forget to include them.
There's this almost like a Sondheimian like, oh, me off been waiting for the eggs from the chicken.
And the cabin stairs.
Yeah.
Here on the
It's-
Penty.
It is so
This for the rest of the episode.
This is it.
No,
Yeah.
but I get you. It's a lot more dragging out the corpse to be like, look, I'm still alive and I showed up and you're welcome.
But like, you get a similar format of appearance from Ensign Rowe, and yet it is one of the most staggeringly beautiful, heartbreaking, challenging moments of
Finally
season
liked her.
3. Yeah, I mean, I liked her back in the day, but that she and Picard had that moment was so beautiful and important. We got a lot of characters that had about that much screen time in seasons 1 and 2, like including Wesley.
So the Ensign Rowe appearance in season 3 is a perfection of an apology for the previous versions of that sort of appearance on Picard. So
Yeah.
everything is sort of, we learned and we're sorry.
And we can't do any more of this, so we got to get it as right as we
We can't-
possibly can now.
We can't fix the one that we did, but we can do this. And we just like making new things.
And-
just keep watching.
You know, to return to something you mentioned earlier, like you guys didn't watch the end of Voyager, but like, Borg Queen, your beef is with Janeway. I know you needed Picard for the genes, but like, you're yelling at him like he was the one who did, like, who took you guys out, and it's 100% Janeway. Who, it's just a tragedy. You know, we're talking a lot about the negative things. I think it's one of those things where, like, because the positive is just so much of it, and I don't want to do that thing where I'm like, and I like this, and I like this, and I like
So
this,
cute.
because
That
it's
was
basically all of it. But the lack of Janeway is another big thing. I really missed her. I know she's in Prodigy.
great. It's a very big hole right now.
I'm currently serving over on Prodigy, where you can come find me training the young Starfleet of tomorrow.
That's 2 accents we've had so far, guys.
It would be great if I were given an opportunity to do every Starfleet cap. Jake, it would be important for Quark.
That's the word. That's the word for Cisco.
So we need Star Trek Cisco, and we need Star Trek Janeway. We need these shows, especially if you're not, and also you're going to give us the changelings and not a single DS9 person.
Hey, it's me, Archer.
It's why I really want to get to Lower Decks, because I know
You do get a lot of
there's literally basically an entire DS9 episode. I know that there are certain other very significant characters that definitely appear on Lower Decks. I know that it's a little bit like canon tangent, but it's still,
It's kind of, you get the cathartic experience of like, I get to watch something that can poke fun at the thing that I am myself kind of poking fun at because they are making these silly choices.
Can we call that tangential?
Tangential, I love it.
canon-gential. But yeah, I'm over.
So- Now let's talk about the sexy beast and in the room, and let's talk about his problems with a lot of the time problems here. So I'm the sexy beast, and my problems are with octogenarian pregnancy,
Septuagenarian.
80-year-old, 30-year-olds. First of all, the actor that plays Jack Crusher is a stunning man who is
Yes.
enormously talented,
Hey, great casting.
incredible casting, and phenomenal resemblance and capacity to emote.
Great casting on talent, and even great casting on playing the child of those two actors.
Truly.
But that is not a 23-year-old man.
No, that's a 35-year-old man who
Yes.
looks beautiful and like the age is born gorgeously in his face.
And maybe he could get away with 30. And some of it's not even anything like an insult, but when you're that tall, when you reach a certain age, unless you have a literal baby face, you can't really play a child like that anymore.
For every inch taller you are, you need 6 more goat placentas.
And I just think that, yeah, he just didn't look like a young kid. Like part of the big thing is like he's a little bit half baked because he has done nothing but be on the run with his mom, and that makes him a fun rake and scoundrel. But the whole part of the show is it's not even necessarily that he was missing a father, because you can become an amazing person without a father. It's that because this was his father and they were specifically trying to miss him so that his train wreck of a life wouldn't affect them. The way that you kind of hope that your child will. And there is an innocent quality to somebody like that who is still in their early 20s and their fontanelle hasn't closed yet, and which is like a point of the show, so it's not even so crazy to say that. And this dude does not have that. He is set. He is a man. He knows where he is going in life. And so the times when he's like, I don't know how to connect to people, it's like, it kind of feels like you know exactly how to connect to people. And that's a great quality to have. You're a beautiful man who seems like you really can express empathy, but that is not the character description on the call sheet for Jack Crusher.
And especially if a huge part of the intention of their casting is keeping in mind having this man be a leading Starfleet character going forward. You can forgive a lot, because I do want to see more of Jack Crusher. I want to see more of exactly that bridge that we saw, and so I can't be too mad at it. It's the same thing as what is he, 96 years old is how Picard is now?
Oh yeah, it's something like he's too old.
And so he was 73 years old when Jack was conceived.
And if Picard is the same age as Jack Crusher Sr., then Beverly is the same age.
Yeah, she can't be that much younger. That's actually a really fair point.
It's really kind of rough on the ages. But all said, I like what Jack offers. I think Sydney LaForge offers just as much. She is a wealth of fantastic ideas, and she was excellently performed. I just really think that one of the things that Picard did was it got me excited about another generation. The cast of Disco took me a minute to fall in love with. The cast of Strange New Worlds came pre-loved in many ways. Yeah. This was the first cast where I was like, this is new characters, but okay, they have my attention.
And this is another kind of first for us with Star Trek. This is the first time we're getting a field test of a cast in something else. And, if it turns out, they have no chemistry, nobody liked any of these characters, this isn't going to work, people hated seeing Seven in the captain's chair, it's just the end of Picard, and that's that they are getting such a solid response, and people are really ready to have that moment with 7 of 9. People are not ready to let go of Raffi. We just got introduced to the literal next generation of the next generation, and I think we loved what we saw. We did, despite our problems with Jack's age. I think we all made very clear that we loved the character. Sydney was great. The other sister, Elia,
real daughter.
So
Sydney and real daughter LaForge.
Really great. If I have another minor quibble complaint, it is that their relationship was depicted kind of weird. And just for how emotional the show was, I thought the two sisters might have a little bit more of an engaging interaction. We got time for that on another show. But like Alexander Rishenko could be in the mix in the future. We've got a lot of options for the kids of the next generation. And I thought that they set it up in a way that I really appreciate. I felt it was fun, and it made me excited for the possibility of another show without feeling like they're really trying to sell it to me. Like, I gotta buy it, otherwise somebody's gonna be in trouble at the studio.
Yeah, it felt just like a nice little gift or a little window into something special rather than specifically being like, we're trying to backdoor pilot lists. I found it very interesting that I read Terry Matalas had specifically considered the renaming of the ship to be Picard instead of Enterprise.
Which
that
is
was one of the ones that I thought it would be.
As soon as they revealed it, I was like, oh, they're going to change the name of Titan to Enterprise. Only because I expected that if we were going to see another Enterprise, it would be an entirely new ship because they like to blow people's minds with Enterprises. And so that was an odd moment. Not a bad one, because I liked the idea that like the crew and the audience maybe fell in love with the Titan's journey so much that it could only be the new Enterprise. But it was just, I thought it would be the Picard, and I thought that we would then get a reveal of the Enterprise G as like, a sphere.
And the Paseg.
And because like part of why I've been thinking they might rechristen the Picard is then that does give us an entry point to having a Picard season 4 that is not focused on Patrick Stewart, because I think one of the things we've discussed is part of the issue with what comes next is what do we call it? And when you name the ship the Enterprise, we already had a Star Trek Enterprise.
Yep.
So I don't know.
And the title that's getting batted around the internet is Legacy, which is great. You're still having this. The title that we have now is Legacy, which I think is cool. One that has been previously suggested is
what?
Oh, I'm fine.
Oh, he's fine.
The New Generation.
The nude generation.
The new generation. Who needs uniforms anymore? Just give me the pips and a little communicator badge.
The naked now generation.
Keep your scrim. I'm going for skin.
Yeah, the new generation, which I also don't hate, but it becomes like one of the big questions coming out of all this is like, where are we going now?
And, I guess we're going back to disco for one more season.
Yep.
We're going to Strange New Worlds for
just one more time.
2 or 3 more seasons. We're going back to Lower Decks, Prodigy. There is the upcoming disco era Starfleet Academy show coming up, which I'm excited about. I'm kind of hoping it'll start Tilly, but we'll see what happens. But I feel as though Star Trek has something right now that it rarely has, which is creative capital. Star Trek has people on its side, and that is not something Star Trek often has. Star Trek usually does not have your benefit of the doubt. And that it does right now speaks volumes about the hard work these creators have put in the last few years.
Talk to me a little bit more about that.
After several bad films and Enterprise, and then the reboot through J.J. Abrams, I don't think people were thinking Star Trek. There's a franchise that's been churning out high-quality, thought-provoking sci-fi the last 10 years.
Especially because of the odd direction that Star Trek took through the Abrams verse being a tangent universe. Like, if I can spoil the Abrams films, which by now I don't think it's been 6, 7 films since the last one, that's where Spock dies. Not random Spock, the original Spock. It's something as we were watching Strange New Worlds that I turned to him and I was like,
what's insane?
Ethan Peck's Spock is Leonard Nimoy's Spock, who will go off and live to go into the J.J. Abrams verse timeline, and that's where he dies. And that's just so strange. And this is, it makes so many things have made Star Trek such a hard sell, especially this side of the millennium. And so to have been given this chance and to have soared the way it has.
I definitely see what you're saying. And it's funny because it has been a very incremental shift. I think, Discovery originally kind of worried me. The thing that I said to both of you 100 times is like, what I'm really looking for is the next show about what the present day Star Trek, so the start of the 25th century, with a crew on a ship. So like the format of Voyager, of the Next Generation. Deep Space Nine is a space station, but same thing. It's the crew in space, in the most current part of the timeline. I want that show. And we've been getting some really great stuff that happens in the past that has the aesthetics of our conception of the future now, which to me is a little bit difficult, but I feel like they made it work. And there's some future jumping in that, but it's not quite what I'm talking about. But they've been kind of branching out and touching various ideas, and Picard to me feels like a really solid step on writing the shit to give us present continuity Star Trek stories that harken back to all of the political intrigue and the meta plot that we all grew up with, that we just got in these little bits and pieces at a time where TV was almost entirely episodic. It was very rare to have serial television. But now that's what we expect from most dramas, and especially most sci-fi and fantasy dramas. We expect really high-minded season to multi-season plots, not being able to... Exactly.
Lost for own television.
Completely. But I think, having the present continuity Star Trek Lost is basically what I'm foaming at the mouth for. And I feel as though they've done a good job of experimenting and figuring out how to do it, that I feel like they're so primed right now.
Well, I know we're going to be talking more Star Trek when we talk Brand New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy. So, did you guys have any final thoughts for now on Picard before we come back to talk more Picard? I feel like Data Lore was not my favorite resolution, but it was good. It just felt like sudden. It just felt like we were so interested in getting through so many great storylines, like Return to Worf or Return to Riker and Troy, that so much of it boiled down to really strong one-liners. And there is a ton of room to see all of those characters come back and get their stories more explored.
I think it was my favorite use of Brent Spiner in all of Picard, though. So there's at least that part.
I still don't know how I feel about it. I love the story for, what it gave us in having a whole Data, a Data who achieved the goal that he really wanted.
Yeah.
I unfortunately was watching Mandalorian at the exact same time, and so got a conception of a character being CGI youthified in a way that works so perfectly that all I wanted then was just do that to Brent Spiner and Data, bring us the android that is unaging back, because that's kind of the point. It's kind of the whole thing. I thought they had a really good explanation for why he aged. I shouldn't say a really good explanation, but like they clearly thought of it.
It functioned.
It functioned. Yeah. And, there was an internal logic to it. I think the way to go would have been to CGI the situation, and maybe just Paramount, Viacom not willing to spend Disney budgets on their CGI, but that was the one thing that I was just like, I maybe am a little spoiled and I'm going to be a brat about this. But I really loved the story, and unfortunately, I think that Data is the one character that can't ever have a show. But he's, I love my androids and my droids, so he's the one that I want it most for. But I was so happy to see Marina Sirtis back. I was so happy to see Gates McFadden back. The women of Star Trek are truly unsung and underloved. They came from a time where there was such a focus on male characters, and female characters were to be sex objects. Jerry Ryan is another really important example of that. That all of these characters have continued to grow with the franchise and have been able to continue working to a point where we have moved the dial a little bit. You know, we are still woefully not meeting the mark, but all three of those women, and women like Raffi and the LaForge daughters, all got to be functioning members of the plot and of Star Trek in Star Trek uniforms or just standard clothing, which, like, that's a win compared to where we were in the 90s.
For sure. Jumpsuit that Troy had to wear on the bridge for like how many seasons?
Like a jazzercise instructor.
And there's even that one where they're doing the jazzercise in the hallway. And then, you know, of course, when we finally got Troy in a Starfleet uniform, she crashes the ship, and then that becomes the giant punchline that they then had to remedy with her piloting to go get the crew that's dealing with the Borg to prove that she can fly the ship and do the thing, which is again another moment of like it's kind of like the A-Force thing where like I loved it and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I immediately was like, some jerk is gonna get online and be like, she can't pilot the ship, this is why, and like she shouldn't be able to do that and do. But no, that was one of those moments that I just absolutely lived for.
Or like that reflective moment where it's Geordi, Worf, and Data sitting on the bridge, and it's Raffi and Seven and the two LaForge girls on the screen. And it's meant to be reflective, but you know someone's like,
they never stand like that.
And women and people just constantly forget they're watching art.
Yeah,
and that's exhausting.
You know, because I feel like a lot of people really shit on Shaw, who was hot and really well performed and a really great compliment to this cast. Everybody can't be a cowboy. That's just madness. Some people need to be like the rule follower, because if everybody's a cowboy, you can't make the show. So some people need to be a little bit more like the Boy Scout. And Shaw's a big, burly Boy Scout. And you don't see a lot of big, burly Boy Scouts. Big and burly is usually, I can't be stopped, I've got a deep voice. And instead, he was kind of like, I play by the rules so that everybody survives.
I can't be stopped, I'm going to tell on you.
Because it's bad boy for life.
You know, and I think one of the moments that really epitomizes Shaw for me in that regard, where he is a Boy Scout, but he's not like whiny or weedy or evil or malignant. And when he calls Starfleet on Seven and Riker and Picard, he's like, you guys just did something heroic, so I'm going to give you a minute to get your fucking story together, but I still called you up on disciplinary action because you're insane.
These are the rules. Yeah, he's actually a really fantastic character because you do encounter that thing, like, more than it's not believable that Troy can fly the ship. It's not believable that these people break the rules this much.
And nobody slaps them on the wrist.
Right. And that, you know, that's such a part of the next generation. So like, we got to let that go. We can't go back and fix that. To bring this character in who specifically is like, I'm trying to have a boring day. I'm not trying to do adventures. And for them to not quite know how to respond to it, but it's not hammy or any kind of like, you know, they're not trying to do like a Lethal Weapon 4 where they're like, we're in for one more. Like, Picard is generally having a dilemma with what to do because he actually does need to break the rules and figure out this situation. But Shaw is absolutely right. Shaw is not being so overtly hostile that you hate him or think he's being unreasonable. But of course, because we love Picard, we want Picard to succeed. And that is a very tense push and pull that a lot of writers' rooms and a lot of productions just simply haven't managed to get right. Because the easier thing is to make the guys over the top or the other dude villainous so that you can move forward. But to end the season or to end the story with, I think, everybody falling in love with Shaw a little bit and never once losing faith entirely in Picard. I think there are moments where we're like, oh, this is rough. I don't quite know what to do with you. But we're always rooting for him.
And it never becoming, Shaw becomes one of them. And he's like, yeah, I'm a cowboy now. Even in that last episode that he's in, when they're saying we have to go to the heart of Starfleet and make this announcement. And Shaw's like, of course we do. But he doesn't fight them. He listens and he believes, but he's not the kind of person who wants to be the cavalry. He wants to bring everyone home safe.
And his final moments are doing that, because his goal is not to be such a rule follower that the rules are always followed. His goal is to be a rule follower so that everybody is safe. And when it comes to a moment where violence is enacted, that safety is still the thing that is important to him, and he puts his life on the line for the safety of his crew. And that's such a beautiful motivation. And from a writing perspective, it's really fantastic that they kept up with that. Yes. And that they made it always about the safety of the crew and not about, like, he just is really boring.
Because that's the easiest way out, to just even passively villainize him with unsavory characteristics. But, one of the things that the show strove to do for 3 seasons, and occasionally at its own detriment, was create characters that were more mysterious than they were necessarily ever clear. And I think they think mystery equals fascinating character in a lot of cases. Because, like, I still don't know who Rafi is in a lot of ways. I still don't know who Rios was.
Oh my god.
At all.
Rios.
And, like, I love these characters. And Rafi's great, but, like, there's, like, Rafi, this woman, just this badass woman. And I'm like, I want to know her story. If she's just this badass woman, then her story is fascinating enough to tell me. So, and I don't mean like prove she's cool. I mean, no, you already proved she's cool. Tell me about her.
Rafi is a character that they constantly failed when she was on her own. When she was with other characters, she was always fantastic. She always played off of other people well, and had her own strengths in those as well. But when she was on her own in early season 3, it was all over the place. Not even just weak, but all over the place.
One of the things I love about Rafi, when and this kind of in a lot of ways speaks to your point, when War finally shows up and you realize that Rafi is a grandmother that is being treated like a child by a paternal figure that is really having to get her to grow up because something is missing. It really speaks to, like, Picard ended leaving me feeling like this was not their last act. Any of the Enterprise D crew, this was not their last act. They've got years of work and adventure and doing stuff and having fulfilling lives in front of them. And what's so funny is we always go back to, like, in the Golden Girls, Blanche is like 48.
Yeah.
And she's like, must move in with these ladies before I die.
This is where I go to die.
And just that whole, they're late 40s, like the oldest. Sophia's 66, is that?
Sophia is like 70 something.
Okay. Which is like how old Gates McFadden is now.
Yeah.
And Sophia is like, any day now she'll die. And then, but like none of these characters by the end of Picard feel like this was their last act, despite the fact that the show sews everything up very well. I left it feeling like, man, Geordi's got so much more teaching to do and so much more, showing the world what Starfleet is. Gates Crusher as an admiral doing medical work will do great things. Picard actually really does feel like he wants to just take a nap, but I don't think he can. But meanwhile, Rafi's a grandmother. Like, even if she's a young grandmother, she is an older woman.
Yeah.
And the fact that she still has so much learning to do, going all the way back to the beginning, this idea of like the show's growing up with us. It was really refreshing to see this character that is childlike in the face of someone with so much knowledge and experience, that being Worf. And that just overall as a theme of the show was kind of the only thing that made it okay for me, that, as you said, the scenes for her are wildly uneven, which I don't think is entirely intentional.
Do these eye drugs.
But it works out.
It works out, and there's some intentionality to the idea that she is wildly uneven, which, I now this is why I want the Star Trek Legacy show, because we now could have the time to actually see what she is like on a more even keel.
I think it'll mostly be a matter of how much the chatter for it keeps up.
And it sounds like it's going.
It is. We're here for it, so.
Well, all right, guys. We're still doing this all sorts of new, climbing over beds to do windows. Yeah. So I think we should throw a commercial.
Okay.
come back, start our Star Trek
Star
Wars,
Wars.
conversation, our
There
Star
you go.
Trek wrap up Star Wars conversation, and then bring in our super cool special guest. And so, I guess please stay tuned, click like, click subscribe, and hang around because we're gonna start to use the Force on you, but not in a way that you would need to call the police
In like a really cool, kind way.
because of the implications. Oh, man. So, welcome back to a very special edition of X is for Show. X is for Shore, as we are hanging out down in Asbury Park, New Jersey. That's right, Bruce Springsteen's one and only. And we are here enjoying an incredible weekend early on in the Shore season. And we still have a show to make. Gosh darn it. We have a responsibility to our feelings because if we don't bring these fifis out, they're gonna Dobson on up, and it's just gonna take us away.
Nailed it.
So I okay. So we are now here to talk the other star magic in our lives. We are here to talk Star Wars. As a kid, I always felt like I would be a Jedi. Like of a lot of like the magical fantasy things you could be. I love Power Rangers. I didn't think I was a Power Ranger. I talked about feeling like connected to Jason last episode, but I didn't talk about like, wow, I am a Jason. I said I want to have those feelings. I feel like I sort of, as a kid, felt like what I thought a Jedi was, that was me. But what I now know a Jedi was all along, I masturbate way too much to be a Jedi.
You're far too attached.
Too
D.
Way too attached.
Oh,
You're a different kind of Jedi. You're not the kind of Jedi that are the Jedi that fell.
I'm
So-
like
I
a
am a
gray
Jedi.
Jedi.
I am a Jedi.
Yeah, you're a Tracy Morgan Jedi. There you go.
So, okay. All right. So, Jedi, Sith, Mandalorian, droid.
Droid.
Droid, okay. Okay.
Sorry, now that we have them, I'm one of the mods.
Okay.
Those did not exist before.
Yeah.
Those, man, I mean, that's a Book of Boba Fett thing, so we won't get too into
Oh,
it.
Book of Boba Fett. Underrated.
There you go.
I am a cool kid on a rainbow colored scooter gang with droid parts that I got from a sketchy dude in a bar / tattoo parlor.
You can see the work of Ann Nesenti
Yes.
in every line of that. All right, Kevo, Sith, Jedi, droid, non-specific Gungan,
Grogu.
Grogu.
Yeah, you are.
You heard it here
I'm a
first.
Grogu.
My little Grogu. Right?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Taking food, getting angry and hitting things. Yep.
I-
am Grogu.
I'm waiting for the queen that comes out in a little Grogu IG costume. Yes. Saving him.
Princess
Right.
Poppy. Do it.
So, oh my God. Yeah, right. Oh, Lucy. Hey, Lucy. I think that I make the most sense to play Grogu because I look the youngest.
I'm a baby.
I win the most awards. So, all the challenges. So, anyway, enough Lucy slander because I love her so much. I just love doing my Lucy impression. We have somebody we need to hear from and hear if they'd be a Jedi, a Sith, well-manicured Wookiee.
Shall we?
Shall.
We shall. Oh,
Right clicking.
there you go.
Hey, Arturo.
Hi folks. Greetings. May the
Yes.
force be with you.
May the force be with you as well. Okay, where can everybody find you, and what would you be?
You can find me at Mr. Toybox on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter while it still stands. And I'll give you the brief answer. I'm a Twi'lek, bred for pleasure but born to fight. I was liberated by a Mandalorian and adopted by them before becoming a Jedi, and then my inevitable turn to Dark Jedi.
So where can I read your fanfic?
It's in my head, and I'm working on getting that out. But
You should,
maybe
because
never.
I love it already. After that gorgeously pectoral Twi'lek in Book of Boba Fett,
Thank you.
what you're describing is exactly up my alley.
Those head tails,
Perfection,
sexy. Helps you channel the force too.
truly.
And there's something about like the freedom of expression because and I mean this with love. When I watch Star Trek, Ferengi are just ugly people, and when I watch Star Trek, look, they're just weird looking people. and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you get to it's an energy being made of star tissue. That's got its own fucking problem. But when I watch Star Wars, I escape in the creatures, in the designs, and I don't know that any creature or design came to life for me this year like the Mother Muffin Mythosaur. There was something so incredible about being confronted with this idea of magic and gods that I thought was only reserved for the Clone Wars and et al. So what did you guys think? Mythosaur or Mythosaur Busters?
That's another sect of Mandalorian.
Grant Imahara is there, and he's ready to prove that kyber crystals can bend in the middle.
I appreciate the Mythosaur. I appreciate that we just got glimpses of it. It was not like a full-on, we're saving that until maybe some other day, or maybe we never have to see it fully. More than that, though, I enjoyed the myths from Clone Wars that have come to life in real life, action. And there's so many of them, right? I mean, Bo-Katan, right? Just let's start there and get into that and how prior to this, the only Mandalorians we ever had were really Jango Fett, Boba Fett. That was it, right? That was it. Clone Wars gave us so
what a
much
list
more.
of winners.
Well, I'm not here to defend them, but I will. And Clone Wars gave us so much more, and now Mandalorian, I feel like it's legitimizing so much of that, and it's bringing it to, to the fore as canon, Disney canon, which feels really cool.
I give Book of Boba Fett some credit for kind of revisiting the idea of Jango and Boba as Mandalorians and showing a strong connection and tie, but Boba really specifically says he is not a Mandalorian, and right. He's sort of the person that excommunicates themselves from the church and then remembers sort of some of the community that they had and
which is cool, because that speaks to the Boba Fett that we always saw. He was just a loner, and so it works for me. And the casting, casting Jango Fett as Boba Fett, I'm a sucker
that
for this
amazing stuff. Madonna accent of his, where he just sort of walks around space being like, "Have you seen my armor?" I'm like, are you gonna say no? Just give the man any armor you find and hope he doesn't notice on your way out the door, Cobb Vanth.
Speaking of armor, can we talk about this Imperial Mandalorian Dark Trooper?
Oh my god.
Melange, talk about Clone Wars. The thing is, if you're a diehard that watched Clone Wars, that you dig Filoni, you get so much more out of the show.
Filoni film.
But if you aren't familiar, then you can just still jump in, and it's just pure Star Wars. It's such a fun show. I think it's very accessible.
Order 66 and a half.
And I'm a little half and half, because I loved the original Clone Wars, the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and then
we covered the Genndy for 5 hours one time. I made everybody sit there and do it.
I love it so much. It's so beautiful. So I did really love the main Clone Wars series, but I didn't watch all of it, and I forgot a lot of it. And this sort of reminded me of everything, and it was one of those I started fact checking, and I was like, oh yeah, this is completely on point. This is solid mythos in every way.
If you didn't know that Pax Vizsla, the guy that died in the penultimate, if you know nothing, you felt that scene. But when you know that Pax Vizsla is part of Clan Vizsla and Pre Vizsla is it's just it's a gold nugget that just makes a character reverberate in a way that I don't think it's easy to replicate, right? Because there's a stratosphere of Star Wars lore, and things go from the books to animated to the big screen to live. There's this growth, and everything is kind of like a remix of the things that have come before it in an interesting way. And yeah, the whole Plan Vizsla thing, them commandeering a fucking Star Destroyer and spray painting the stop. Like what? Come on.
That is absolutely the way you ride the whip, and I have to.
Till the wheels come off and you crash it into Moff Gideon's crib.
Wheels come off. So I am compelled to ask a question to all of the guys, and Kevo, I'm gonna start with you. One of the things that I'm really obsessed with about this season of Mandalorian is the fact that this is the first time that I felt like there actually were two leads. It wasn't just Mandalorian and some peeps. I really felt like Bo-Katan really like co-led the show. One of the things I love about her is I think she is a religious zealot. She just has nothing to zeal over. So she just kind of rages and seethes. And I truly believe there is this sort of sense of you can reform the idea of what made you who you are that sort of runs through the modern storytelling. Like with Rey, you are not a Palpatine, you are a Skywalker. Bo-Katan, you are not one of those Mandalorians, you're one of these Mandalorians. How do you feel about the old new is old era of Star Wars of now?
I very much feel like Bo-Katan is a zealot who very hard lost her faith and was searching for something to believe in and was very jaded and was very, you have to prove it to me, you must show it to me. And Mandalore was like, you, and we're gonna show you. And she's like,
Court me.
I didn't expect that. I still want to say no. And one of the things about this season is that a lot of people were very suspicious of the armorer, and I think it's just because she is a very dry, very arch person, and I don't think it comes across any more than in the final scene of the season when she's like, well, you would need the baby's parents, wouldn't you? And it really,
the wind blows, Peter.
It reframed so many other things she had said for me throughout these past 3 seasons where she's like, well, aren't you the special one? And having her be on Bo-Katan's side was so important, and another step in her having to be like, fine. She wanted to feel sorry for herself forever, I think. And I feel like that in a lot of ways is very representative of a lot of Star Wars fandom, where life, Star Wars, multimedia, so many things didn't really turn out the way you thought they would. And you just want to sulk and pout, and you don't care that this Mandalorian show is really good, and Grogu isn't just cute, he's actually a really compelling and strong character that you root for and want to see grow.
Yes.
Yes, and fight, and yes. But they're going to shove a mythosaur in your face and say, do you really not believe in this? They're going to dare you not to believe in what they are building, and I'm here for it. I believe it.
I think Grogu has the potential to become one of the greatest Star Wars characters. I think we're just at the beginning of his arc, and a Mandalorian that's born of Yoda's unnamed race and has Jedi power. Like he's let him cook, let them keep cooking, because I think Grogu's an amazing character, and he's that rare, we had mentioned it in a previous episode about Jeff the Shark, right? Like sometimes these cute things don't really work, and sometimes they hit. And Grogu's that rare exception where it hits and turns out to be potentially so much more than just cute.
And I think, Bo and Grogu, as the show is The Mandalorian, and especially in the first few episodes of the first season, you really get the vibe that that is all this show can be, is the story of this one dude, and that maybe that's kind of limiting. And the way that it expands to be about what it means to be a Mandalorian, the Mandalorian as a definition and an archetype that applies to all of these people. And so now that it can apply to all of them, let's fold them into the story. And I think the two people that benefit the most from that are Bo and Grogu. But then, like, all the way on the other side of the spectrum, you do have Moff Gideon as like someone who is trying to be a Mandalorian and sort of to appropriate the culture and to bastardize it, and is punished accordingly.
Exploit it.
Exactly. And
borrow some genetics from some little green babies.
Just steal some baby blood.
He's like literally the Mr. Sinister of the Star Wars universe right now, and I'm here for it. I agree with everything you just said. And I want to get into Moff Gideon actually for a little bit, because a lot happened in this one episode, like from destroying the black saber, or to the clones, and him revealing that he was growing his little army of the best of him and trying to tap into harnessing the Force.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big development, to have floating around. I don't know if anybody caught it, but in the previous episode, he's having a little, video Zoom with other Imperial, and one of them is Hux, Admiral Hux. And he mentioned that Hux is obsessed
the father
with,
of.
Yep.
Right, and he's like, you're obsessed with cloning. You're the one obsessed with cloning. So it's like, again, like taking the opportunity to like put connective tissue from one thing to the next and like doing it in a cool way. I think we have not seen the end of Moff Gideon. In my notes, I actually wrote Darth Gideon, because hear me out. What if one of those clones was able to harness the Force and perhaps came to life because it was in a vat of boiling embryonic fluid and was able to survive? And
or what if those weren't the only clones?
Yeah. Or what if they weren't the only clones? What if like the Prime one gets activated upon his death? There's
but we
so
watched
much.
Moff Gideon get Gus fringed right off the board.
Right, but
he got fringed
that just leads me further to believe that there is a clone. I don't know that I believe he succeeded in finding a way to clone Force abilities into someone yet. I don't believe you did it, Bob. I believe
I have done it.
Sure you did, Giddy. Sure you did. I love that he's trying, and I was gobsmacked because I thought it was so cool. I don't think he did it.
I could see it being one of those things where he either it seems like he has access to the Force, but it like burns out the body, or he does, but it comes at some kind of great cost.
Very
that's the price of the Dark Force, right? Or the dark side of the Force.
Very Sidious.
Yeah, very Sidious. You come out a little disfigured from it. A nice little yellow eye moment.
Yeah, oh my gosh, but
great with those.
Oh my gosh, but nothing else needs to happen with it. This really could. I mean, it shouldn't be, and I'm with everybody wanting there to be more, because Giancarlo Esposito is, I think, one of the finest actors of his generation. I do think Gus Fring is quite literally the most frightening thing I've ever seen on television.
I love him on Once Upon a Time.
He's very good with a terrible character on Once Upon a Time. But all this needed to do was make the cloning of Palpatine possible.
Right.
And now that happened right after Palpatine's death. So recent Palpatine death can now benefit from, I almost said Fring clones, from Moff Gideon cloning, so that it can make revenge of J.J. Abrams not appreciating what was done to his movie possible.
How? Go ahead. No,
well, and I think that we knew a lot about cloning from the expanded universe, which these movies have said, are not canon at all, but we're also pulling in elements. Like, we get a lot of Thrawn references in Mandalorian, and I'm excited to see those finally pan out. But, cloning was a huge part of the expanded universe in terms of like the cloning of Palpatine and the cloning of Mater, not just like Clone Wars stuff. But when we got to Snoke is like some kind of clone abomination puppet that they were just using, it all felt like, but that's just kind of out of nowhere. Where did that come from? And this is kind of doing some it's not even retconning, but it's like retro filling in of the details that then when you see that this stuff is happening in the ninth Star Trek movie, it feels less like, oh geez, this really is just kind of a grab for whatever plot details you can get your hands on.
And in some ways it's that the sequels were messy. In some ways it's that Star Wars movies are always messy.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's that the galaxy is just so expansive that how do you shove this whole long backstory of that guy is the later redhead's dad, and what he's doing right now is starting the process of.
I have your solution. Knock, knock. Do you have a moment to speak about the good work of our Lord and Savior Darth Plagueis the Wise? Because that was my poll for who was Snoke, right? Because that would have just tied back to episode 3. It's just enough, and you can justify it away. Whatever. You can hand wave that, and it would have worked. And whether or not you saw those movies or whatever, he would have been the Emperor character, and he would have been uniquely positioned to take that role, right? Something like that would have been so cool, and making him some disfigured clone was botched and misguided at best.
Completely agree.
I also wonder if Darth Plagueis is like a plague. If he's now that need for if he now is this dark current in the Sith that there can only ever be 2 and they always have to look like a fucked up sneaker. And
I wonder if Darth Maul is a biter.
A biter?
Yes, he likes to bite. He likes to maul things, just like
okay. I'm attracted to Ray Park, so I'm into it.
Yeah, Ray Park's great.
I'm into
Ray Park's
it too.
terrific. You know what happens to a Darth Maul when he's struck by lightning? It doesn't matter because he'll just get a cybernetic body and he's just never going to be dead. So it doesn't matter.
Don't act shocked.
I
want to go back to one thing that TK mentioned about how the Mandalorian started off as being about just Mando and Din, and how it has expanded so much. I think it was really necessary for it to start like that, because our whole concept of a Mandalorian and the Mandalorian armor to that point is the loner bounty hunter, whether it's Jango or Boba, right? So that was the only in that was going to make sense to anybody on Earth, right? There couldn't have really been another way, for me anyways, to have really bought into Din and his story. And then for it to start off that tight and then just keep expanding, and now we have a reunified Mandalorian culture back on Mandalore. It's pretty tremendous what the show has accomplished in 3 short seasons.
And one of the things that I'm so excited for is I feel like by giving us this whole other group of people that are not the Jedi, but that have a whole culture that we can get into and identify with, it makes me really look forward to this next series of Star Wars films, because, it will have been decades in the future from where we are now in Mandalorian. I have really high hopes for Grogu appearances in these next movies. But I have always been a little wary of the film's ability to move past the idea of the Jedi. And Mando did the work to make me believe that the Star Wars universe can move past it, and that we can have a Force user that is not a Sith or a Jedi or is trying to figure out light or dark, but belongs.
It's not a Sith. It's not a Jedi. It's a baby.
It's just a baby.
Bad baby. No squeezy.
Yep. But yeah, I'm very excited for having this group to follow and identify with in future big Star Wars projects. Similarly, I just love some of the work that they've done with droids.
Truly.
Stars. Yes. Can we have a quick intermission on just droid history? Because okay, let's talk about IG-11, right? Who we saw, very gallantly sacrifice himself earlier in this series. Come back now as Grogu's freaking walking suit. Yes.
Yes.
Absolute gold. But if you take it a step before that, the reason IG-11 was instantly so iconic is because he's basically IG-88, the same kind of
Yeah.
model and look, and that very kind of one of those classic Star Wars designs.
Yeah.
That right away it was like, okay, no, this isn't that one, the bounty hunter, that never even said a word in the movie. He's just like standing there for a second, and he's becomes one of the iconic
And
characters
Boba,
of the whole franchise. Standing next to Boba, prime spot to be seated, and he didn't
Like
even have
Spice
his gross
being the
cheat.
cheat
Spice
seller.
in the finale. Stop.
So, anyways, yes, droid culture, like just seeing like that deep pull become its own character, mourn his death, celebrate his rebirth twice in one season, once as like this, awesome
His body
monkey
armor
suit,
shell.
and then
yeah.
actually like as his own, droid-like person again. It's just to guard the gentle people of whatever town. Come on.
And I think, we loved R2 and C3PO, but
And
I think there
Chopper.
was always a degree to which we felt like there was some anthropomorphizing happening, and they didn't necessarily have the personalities we were ascribing to them. It was just movie magic.
Yeah.
But increasingly, like R5 does some stuff that really kind of canonizes the idea that, and BB-8 did a little bit in the previous films, but I feel like we are increasingly, and especially with being able to do it in a serial format,
Serialized, yeah.
getting to see that like there's more going on with droids, and it's more than just being cute.
I agree with that, but I will push back a little bit, and I will say that we weren't reading much into it. I think it's pretty textually there that R2D2 and C3PO were a very queer, odd couple, the feisty little, combative one, and the fussy, prissy. I mean, it's kind of blatant,
It's super Bert and Ernie.
super Bert and
So we
Ernie. It's
see
Bert and
so
Ernie.
many other droids in movies that aren't that are just like they're lifeless husks. Don't worry about them. And so the two main character droids have stories and plot and relationships because they're our main character droids. But all the other droids that we see don't really get to have all of that. So it's just like they're just robots.
But we're seeing more and more of
now
droids
we're
having
getting-
personality, sentience,
Exactly.
autonomy.
But
Force
R2D2
powers.
and C3PO are uniquely positioned, and that they really go back to episode 1, right? Like Anakin
Yeah.
built
And that was
C3PO,
always
R2D2, so it's there's like a little magic to them. Like R2D2 never really has had his memory wiped. C3PO has had it wiped countless times over the decades. It's great.
So
The first
okay.
queer couple we were all exposed. I was exposed to as a kid.
I need to ask some serious questions though about something that they've managed to do on Mandalorian over and over, which is even if he is the biggest deal in the world, Grogu manages to never be the main character, which is such a compliment to Jon Favreau, who John, any age, any size, oh my God, the teddy bear I've always needed. I love you so much. You're so handsome. Oh my God. But also, sorry, Nico Hornyton. So I love that they use Grogu wisely. It's not an over-positioning of this commodifiable character, but rather a cautious hyper-utilization, making sure that every moment of Grogu plays perfectly, like the yes, yes, no, no that we can't stop referencing. I mean, he literally said, do Krang, but make it cute. And then the balancing beam running is one of the most perfect bits of emotional puppetry I have ever experienced. I was frightened for a character. I knew they would never have the misdirection to kill off. And it was just such a wonderful execution of the blending of this character can be major without having to be the only thing we have time for.
Exactly. And then he pulls off a feat like the force field, at the end. Like, yeah, Grogu, I totally agree. He's this wonderful character that could be completely overused and grow tiresome, but they've done a very, very careful job of giving us the right amount at the right times. And I'm sorry, like if you consider yourself a Star Wars fan and you don't like Grogu, I just don't get it. You know, I just don't. I'm sorry.
And
your mileage may vary, but I don't get it. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with that. And I also the other thing that I was talking about earlier is I think being a puppet, not guy. I think we are often a little bit too precious about that. But this is an example of it really needed to feel like a lived body character, a physical presence in the room.
Fullness,
and just the motion, just the like. I am filming the movement of the eyes. I am not, drawing the movement of the eyes. I think that is the one extra detail in this like really brilliant writing and storytelling that's happening that really pulls the whole thing together, and it's such a well done piece of animatronic puppetry. There's just so much to laud and applaud there.
Yeah, which isn't to say that like it would have been impossible to do with CG, but I really appreciate that they are trying to get more into practical effects and even do better at blending the two with the new screen filming.
Yeah, the background LED.
Yeah, I think it's so important to not just fall entirely into green screens and really try.
Couldn't agree more. I've often felt like Mando from the very beginning is what I always wanted the prequels to be, right? Yeah. And I love the prequels. I love the prequels for, I love them, right? And I love them now more maybe than I did then. I loved them then, but it just kind of, I've grown to appreciate them more with time. But Mando is what I always wanted because it really takes place in that world that is so clearly articulated in the first trilogy, right? We're in there's that same kind of dated, futuristic, yet, it's kind of steampunk. It's just magnificent. It's hard to believe sometimes that this is a show and not a movie. Like I was watching I was rewatching it today, and Mando fighting the Praetorian guards, it's a great scene, and just the weapons, the Magna, electro staffs, like that goes back to freaking episode 3, it's so good, and it's such a gift. And I was thinking about it earlier as far as the few times that like a show has that kind of quality where you can accept that it's part of the bigger canon, and I think it's kind of something relatively new, and I want to give a lot of props to Disney Plus for it because WandaVision, Captain Winter Soldier, and
Anthony Mackie training shirtless.
Like all of it, like those are stories where it feels like, oh wow, this is part of the larger MCU, and I think Mando really, and now Ahsoka coming up, and all these other great projects coming up, are really giving that opportunity to Star Wars in a really fresh way.
I was saying earlier that back in the day, for years, when people our age were asking for sequels to Star Wars, this is what we were talking about. This period directly after Return of the Jedi ended. That's what we actually wanted to know what was happening.
Our brain started to cultivate the idea.
Yeah, we wanted to know what exactly did Luke do after they finished that last battle. How was it for Leia and Han when they got married? We wanted to know what the immediate aftermath was.
I'm like imagining, it's like saying, wow, the end of this movie is they've planted a farm. Do you know what the sequel should be? The origin of the dirt. And that's kind of what the prequels were.
Yeah.
The origin of dirt. And I love things about it, but I can't do the prequels in good conscience.
But then the sequel films were, what if everybody was miserable 20 years after they started the farm? And
X-Men had a profound impact on many filmmakers.
Yeah.
In terms how the people who are here to oppress nice, good farmers still exist 20 years later.
And are making things even worse in new and different ways.
Farm didn't work out the way you thought it was going to. So that's a lot to come back.
Force subsidies, ethanol tax.
So to get this moment back, to take that time to explore what happened right after Return of the Jedi, and aesthetically to have it really look like it honors what we would see in those films. I think it works so beautifully.
I have to pause us for 1 second. I just saw that the most wonderful fan, Ali Galactic, is here. And we're doing such an unusual stream. We're at the Asbury Park Empress Hotel. Producer extraordinaire Kembo's not in his booth. The two of us aren't on our let me look perfectly at the camera games. So it's a little unusual, but we're having such a blast talking about Star Wars.
Hi, Ali. Real quick, shout out to Ali. I gotta share something with you guys. Lately, I've had the pleasure of kind of retreading Star Wars ground. If you're following me on Twitter, you probably noticed a huge uptick in my Star Wars commentary, and that's what I love about Star Wars.
Invite.
Yeah, we're all there with you.
It's something that like comes in and out of my life and at different points, and like I've read a lot of the now expanded universe books, and it's just like a fun universe to return to. And I'm re-walking this ground because I'm taking my boyfriends through it, and I've had the unique privilege to be in this perspective where like they're watching. Like we just finished episode 6 today, right? So we've done the original and the prequels and the original now, and watching it with folks that like. In episode 1, they weren't clear on Palpatine, like the Chancellor, being the Emperor, right? Like I saw that be a surprise. Like it was just watching them see, like, oh my God, Anakin is Darth Vader. Just a true like gift. And today, talking Star Wars, Ali came up, and I was telling them about what a wonderful person you are and how I adore you, and how we've been Twitter friends for a few years, and have excellent taste in so many of my fandoms. So I love you, Ali.
So Turo, I gotta ask, are you gonna show your boyfriends Mando now, or are you gonna show them the prequels first? Or sorry, the sequels.
See, so that's the thing, is like I'm very tempted to take them directly to like we could watch Obi-Wan, we could watch Mandalorian. Like we could kind of do that, and I think that would be wonderful. Selena S. Titties is also rewatching Star Wars though, like just in a weird, echo of the universe. God love her. Shout out to Selena S. Titties. Love you, bitch.
Anytime you want to be on, Selena.
We know you're watching right now.
I hope that she does her Twi'lek dangles as her breasts. And it's just like...
Oh my God. Selena S. Titties wearing her wedding cake quinceañera dress on Naboo. Let's make it happen. But she's outpacing us in the rewatch, and she has begun to spoil a few things. No tea, no shade. Love you, queen. So I think because of that, we may have to watch the sequels. The mixed blessing and joy that they are.
The only reason I ask is because I'm really curious to see somebody have that experience of getting to see what I was saying, the immediate aftermath of what happens after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and it's like we're in a fun zone right now, so it's kind of like I would like them to kind of like live that little experience right now.
Yeah.
It's cute. They're even watching the Clone Wars animated series like in between stuff, which I thought was going to be a really hard sell. I mean, animation often is, but yeah, it was only a couple of episodes, and those motherfuckers are hooked. So it's really fun. Rewatching Star Wars through fresh eyes is a fun experience if you get the opportunity to be somebody's Star Wars tour guide.
I actually got Alisansan. I actually got that's an actual George Lucas quote. So I'll tell my funny story in a second, but to tell a different funny story, when they were putting Allison Janney in as the new Star Tours host in Disney World and Disneyland, they realized that they had done everything but name the character
that she would be playing.
So one of the Imagineers turns to George Lucas and says, "Okay, but what's her name?" And he just goes,
George takes 3 seconds and goes, who's playing her again? Allison Janney?
Ali San. And that's it. He's done.
And that's how he does writing. Thanks, George.
One of the things that's really been on my mind with Star Wars lately is the sense of family and community that Star Wars defines also includes the idea of social interaction that I think is really beautifully illustrated, Arturo, by what you just said about your relationship with you and Ali and so many of us that have many relationships like that. I sort of imagine at their peak, the Jedi were just sort of coming and going and everybody knew each other in that way that Bendis was like Jessica Jones could have slipped through the cracks. I feel like one of the things that the Star Wars universe has become is something so varied and diverse that you can have your own section of it that you're interested in and not in the other parts. You were asking me earlier, TK, if I would be interested in adding Wheel of Time, in adding programming like Rings of Power. And I said probably not right now because I feel like that kind of opens up a really big world we have to start covering. But something like Star Wars or the Cosmere or the Marvel Universe are so holistically self-complete. It feels like Star Wars has officially become something where there's room for 10 different versions of the same fandom.
I think Star Wars especially is the closest thing to Marvel that is doing something totally different insofar as there are so many possibilities for where you can tell stories and what kind of stories you can tell, yet still have them be connected to a central core wherein your fandom and your audience has a lot of personal curatorial ability to say, I'm interested in these stories. Like, I still have not watched Obi-Wan.
It's so good.
And I'm very excited to, but I feel fine that I haven't yet. I'm not sitting there going, I feel like I'm missing some huge part of the picture. And similarly, there's a bunch of Marvel books right now that I'm not reading. And I feel like most of this stuff I will get to in time. Some of it I will simply choose not to, but I know that I have the tools to curate my own experience and that everybody else does as well. And Star Wars, kind of almost more than Marvel now, because Star Wars is firmly broken into comic books, having been broken into film and shows, where, Marvel, I think, they've now pretty much broken into shows, but I think they're still figuring out what that means for them long term in a different way than Star Wars is.
I do have to say, as someone who's normally the biggest advocate and supporter of you don't need to watch every piece of most of these things, especially like Star Wars, they try to work really hard to make every project accessible in its own way, where it can draw in a new audience and it doesn't have to worry about too much being too alienating. And if there are things, they include references or flashbacks. I'm really nervous about Ahsoka though, because we have not watched a lick of Star Wars Rebels. So,
my God! Yeah, I am here to hit the brakes on that. Intervention.
We got stuff to do.
We won this thing, dude. Listen, do you know how much time this program takes?
Well, I have a solution for you. I have a solution for you. We can talk offline about it. But I'm ready for us to spearhead a Rebels rewatch segment of this show, because it is such high quality. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars animated series in any capacity, in so many ways, this is inherits and brings so many of those things back in its own way. But moreover, it's just a whole new crop of characters that kind of follow the original formula, where you get a pilot, a surviving Jedi, the young ingenue who's force sensitive. It has all of these, the feisty droid. It is fantastic. And last thing I will say for plugging Rebels, I can't think of a show that has done this better, that in the span of however many seasons it is, and there's not that many, the way the characters grow and evolve and change, you do not have the same characters from season one at the end. And yeah, y'all, let's do a rewatch. It is 5,000% worth the time.
I have to assume that the intention of Ahsoka is, like with all these other projects, it is to be sort of a reboot of the concept, a reintroduction of the concept.
I think it's not even to be a reboot of the concept, but it is to be its own show that you will not feel like I'm really missing out having not watched Rebels, but rather you will feel like I am now compelled to go back and empowered to go back and fill in some additional detail from the show that was perfectly fine on its own and that I absolutely loved, but motivates me to know more about this character and discover, to get to see scenes from the rich background that they are describing is their lives on the show. So I'm not saying don't watch it, but I'm saying I think if it ended up that you didn't have the time to or weren't able to before Ahsoka came out, that
Might be okay.
You'd be A-S-okay. And I feel like that's what Star Wars has done so well in this era that I'm now saying like I feel confident about this.
You're entering your understandable era.
I'm entering my incompletionist era where, yeah, it's true. You don't have to see every single thing. That's the beauty of Star Wars. It's like the more you see, the more you read, the more you dig into it, like the more you're... Are we on delay?
Oh my God, Taryn.
Sorry, Taryn.
That's true.
Comic book artist extraordinaire Taryn and Glima just dropped in the chat to say a joke that he knew would kill me. Good job.
It's true though. We're gonna get some wonderful characters. We're gonna get Sabine. Like that's huge. Again, going back to Clone Wars and Bo-Katan, like just the genealogy of Sabine Grease. Spoiler alert, that's her last name, guys. Like she's part of that clan, that family. It's that kind of party. And
it's so cool and so crazy seeing all these things translated from the animation. One of the things that we were saying over dinner was that like it feels like half the time the look on Katie Sackhoff's face is she can't believe that they're letting her do this. Like she expects any moment they're going to say
it's over.
Punked. This was all a joke. You don't get to play at Bo-Katan Kryze live action. Are you out of your mind? She's like moving a little delicately. Who's gonna take this energy shield from me?
But one of the bravest, most unique, and important choices in the history of franchise media to say, like, we give up. We had such a good run in animation, and we can't afford to not make these characters live action anymore. Put Rosario Dawson in makeup. We're doing an Ahsoka show.
Go ahead. Do live action Mandalorians. Include all of the kid kidnapping.
Yeah.
Make flying in jetpacks look amazing. How did they... Oh, it's taken us so long, but we finally got here, guys. Be aware
your jetpack may not like you.
Your jetpack might be a little bitch.
It hates you.
It wants to see you die. It's a cat.
Yes.
Yes. If I have one critique about the show, it is that it did not follow up on her being like, your jetpack hates you. You need to train with it.
Jetpack likes it a little bit too much.
Just immediately he's perfect with that. They are best friends, but I never see it smile.
No, I mean, it's almost like a symbiote. I expect it to be a little feisty.
A little
what I'm
feisty.
saying.
Yeah.
A little pushback.
Yeah.
He needs a voice like Saba from Power Rangers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To Mandalorian,
yes,
because this is okay. This was so much fun.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with this. I can't wait till you come back for things like Transformers and more Star Wars. But to focus on this Star Wars for a moment.
On this Star War.
This Star Wars. This particular Star Wars. I was devastated to see that we have entered our crushed Darksaber era, and what I'd really hoped was that at the end of the episode, Bo-Katan Kryze was going to walk up to the Armorer and go, "Armorer, I saved this for you." And the Armorer was going to be like, oh, that's a kyber crystal. Wow.
Interesting.
And like try and scoop it up with the little armor pieces and get sent home in the first week, like Irene.
Not Irene Dubois. Stay tuned for the season 5 finale when Grogu uses that kyber crystal to construct his lightsaber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because never forget, Yoda in his prime was spry and a
Yeah,
badass with
yeah.
a lightsaber. So
that's my favorite
Grogu
part of
has
the
a
prequels.
bright future. And it was the most unexpected thing when he just pulls it out and starts whooping ass and spinning around all over the place. It was like, oh my god, like that little doddering puppet is now this amazing ball of
Stone
fury.
Cold Killer.
Stone Cold Killer.
I genuinely assume half the reason they had Moff Gideon crush it is the live action design of that Darksaber. I don't think came out the way they wanted to.
See, I liked it.
I just feel like it looks a little bit too Armin Decker. Like I
A little too Dunky Donuts.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that. Like I would love it to just be like a really deep purple just lightsaber. It has that weird like casing. I'm with you.
For some
maybe it was
reason,
best
it just
that we crush it. But
it
shout out
it
to
works
Disney
for me. Like the
for
idea that
selling-
it's like bright black.
I guess.
Shout out to Disney for selling a ton of merchandise. Lightsaber replica. I just recently saw a Darksaber bedroom lamp, and then ending
love
the
that.
finale with crushing it. Like, God love Disney.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and The Mandalorian is one of those shows that loves to do, like, you haven't seen the last of this thing yet. I think, you know, we probably haven't seen the last of Moff Gideon's face, whether it's the original dude that's all burned up or it's a clone or whatever. I think, you know, that we saw the Darksaber crushed and not, like, thrown off the cliff at the end or something. I suspect, you know, some of the theories we've heard here, there's a lot of possibilities, but what do you got this time? What do you got this
I'm
time?
sorry, but wait, hear me out. So, if a drag queen named Mandalorian ever got sent to lip sync for her life, Rue would be like, take the helmet off. And she would be like, I'd like to keep the helmet on, please. And it would just,
And then RuPaul would go, "This is the way."
and she'd be like, no, it's my religion. And
Well,
And you have the armor at the judges table going, like, if you take it off.
Yeah.
we've just created a whole new television show that I think is going to change things even more.
Oh god.
Welcome to the expanded universe.
Jeffrey Bowers, shop and call me. So,
That fucking Rancor.
oh my god, yes. Mythosaur Challenge is my favorite week. Anyway, Arturo, it has been an honor, a blessing, and a privilege to have you with us. It has been like what an unbelievable time to have. Please give us your partingest thoughts on Mandalorian, where everybody can find your handsome face on the internet. And please know we cannot wait to have you back for more amazing programming here on X's for Show.
Thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor to be here. I adore you guys. This is the way, and this has been a fucking blast. So thank you so much. Can't wait to see what happens. All hail Darth Gideon whenever he rises from the ashes. And yeah, thanks for having me. Catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Mr. Toybox. And see you for our special Rebels coverage. TBD on the release date on that, but stay tuned.
Well, as David Yost said, until we catch these hands next time, I can't let that go. I'm so angry all weekend.
I don't blame you.
We think you're amazing, Arturo. We will see you soon.
Thank you. See you guys.
Oh, so I have to look at my schedule to get this right because, with our changing show stuff, there's some stuff I just don't have as memorized the way I used to. So I want to give you guys just a little bit of spring cleaning-ish stuff. Oh, I can't read this.
What are you looking for?
He's looking for the schedule
What's
for
next week?
Saturday, we are going to be doing a
The Tony's party. Oh, sorry.
You are such a horse's ass.
Yeah, but he's our horse's ass.
Tony's party. Tony's party.
It's
With
this-
a box of scraps.
It's this guy named Tony, and he's having a party. So we will be broadcasting from there.
As usual, with what we are doing right now with X's for Show, we are going to be bringing something fun and unique next week, which is going to be us discussing.
The Tony nominations. And we will be bringing in somebody who knows infinitely more than anybody I've ever met about this stuff.
It's Tony nominations. He lives down the street.
No, it's she. She's a drag queen. It's Tony with an I.
Right.
It's Tony
It's
nominations.
Irene.
It's Irene. She's here to pick up her award for fastest person sent home. And so we're going to be doing every show eligible for the nominations party. Super excited. There's not as many as you'd think, but we're going to talk about all of them. From there, we are going to, on Sunday, say goodbye to the Sins of Sinister. That's right, Sins of Sinister. We are at the end of you, and there's nothing else I'd rather do than say goodbye to you. It's been a fun ride, but all events need to come to an end.
Please.
So, guys, this is our first ever hotel room live stream from the Jersey Shore. It was a blast.
I really think we nailed it.
You know, the problem is like the actual thing is like a bunch of us do record from the Jersey Shore kind of natively. So it's just more like a little bit on the beach today.
In a hotel.
Yeah, I wish I could show you guys how gorgeous it is out here. It's unbelievable. But live from the Empress Hotel at Asbury Park, we are X's for Show. Hey guys, where can everybody find you here on? Oh my God, where can everybody find you here, Kevo?
I go first.
Keep yourself alive.
Well, you can find me on tweeters and grammars at Kevoreally. That's KEVOREALLY. Teak, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and technically I'm on the other ones, but I just don't know. But always it's XNate, XGray, X. And Nico, where can we find you?
Thanks for asking. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, where Elon Musk is so afraid of me, he won't give me a blue check mark because he knows I will write such a scathing review of it. I will tear that check mark to pieces. At Nico Action, that's NICOACTION. You can find me on all social media there, not just on the 29-person blue checkmark machine. And until next time, when we cover the Tonys, I'm really sorry for snatching that from you. I guess that was the real snatch game.
That was the real snatch game. Kanye.
Let me try this. Keep those galactic lights lit.
I love this.
Those New Republic gateways open. Hyperspace gateways
Hyperspace
open.
gateways open.
Ooh, hyperspace lanes. Or those transporters.
Those transporters?
Keep
Okay.
them clear of those awful DNA codes.
Remember, the Kessel Run is as long as you make it.
The real Kessel Run is in your heart.
The real Tesla runs the friends we made along the way.
And we'll see you.
Goodbye.